Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you here for this important event. We are really delighted here at RUSI to welcome the former Ukrainian Prime Minister, Yatsenyuk. Thank you so much for joining us. We know it's been a grueling trip for you through several capitals with more to come. So we're just absolutely pleased that you've chosen RUSI to stop by at this important time. I just want to remind everyone about a few practicalities before I hand over the floor to the Prime Minister. Please turn off your electronic devices or put them on silent. And in the case of an emergency, our staff who are standing in the back will direct you to the emergency exits. And then the attribution rules for this event, I'm happy to say, for once, is entirely on the record, both the speech itself as well as the questions and answers. So I want to thank the Prime Minister for his openness and transparency in that regard. It's always very valued here. We all know why we're here today. His Excellency Arseniy Yatsenyuk, the former Prime Minister of Ukraine, chairman of the Kyiv Security Forum, and founder of the Open Ukraine Foundation, will be addressing us today. And Mr. Yatsenyuk was Prime Minister when Russia first launched its war of aggression against Ukraine in 2014, and he's often referred to as the architect of a series of reforms between 2014 and 2016 that helped stabilize the country, rebuild the armed forces, secure Ukraine's energy independence, advance closer ties with Europe, to include visa-free travel with the European Union. All of these are things which set Ukraine up in a position of resilience when the Russians unfortunately didn't take the hint and invaded Ukraine a second time in 2022. Minister Yatsenyuk was among the few who publicly warned of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And in your address, I hope you'll offer some personal thoughts around whether Russia's aggression can be stopped, how we secure lasting peace in Europe. Give us some insights into what the mood is among the Ukrainian people now several years into the war, and what principles should guide this reconstruction. So with that, I could spend time introducing your very impressive bio as a combination of politician, economist, lawyer, think tank leader, but I think the more impactful portion of this would be to hear directly from you and leave plenty of time for questions and answers from our distinguished audience. So with that, I will turn the floor over to you and we will switch places. Thank you, Prime Minister.
Well, thank you for this kind of presentation, and due to the achievements that you've enlisted, my approval rating in Ukraine is around 1%. So I believe you said that in case if something's happened, there is an exit. I believe that we won't hear any kind of air raid sirens in London. That's not what we actually experience every single day in Ukraine. And my team that has arrived with me, usually every night they spend either in the underground cellar or at the parking slot, or just sitting in your apartment with the so-called rule of the two walls. So Ukrainians believe that if you hide under the two walls, the drone won't hit you. The reason why I'm telling you this is that, look, an overall mood in Ukraine is still very positive. So we still believe in our victory. First of all, let me use this as a chance to tell you thank you. I mean, to the British people, to the United Kingdom, for everything you've done for Ukraine. And the very decision to provide Ukraine with both Challenger tanks and Storm Shadow missiles was a sea change. It was a turning point for the entire free world to look differently on the ability to support Ukraine. And today in the morning, I met your former Chief of Defense, Admiral Radukin, and I am very grateful to him personally. And a few days ago, we met your former DOD, Minister of Defense. So you've done a tremendous job. Here is the thing. We have just two case scenarios. The first one is Ukraine is to win. And if Ukraine wins, it means the entire free world will win, and we have the chance to restore the global order, which is right now in shatters. Another one, which is completely unacceptable, but that's what Russia is dreaming of. And not only Russia, but China, North Korea, Iran. You saw this gang sitting in celebration of the 19th anniversary of the victory over Imperial Japan. I never heard that it was just China who got the victory over Imperial Japan, but now at least we know. And it is a new axis of evil that wants to take over the world and to impose new rules, which are more Chinese-type rules where Russia plays as a ram. You're going to ask me whether we have enough resources to win. And the answer is as plain as a day. Look at the GDP of the free world. Look at the population of the free world. Look at the cutting-edge technologies of the free world. Look at the strongest military of the free world. Look at the financial ability and capacity of the free world and compare it to Russia. Russia's economy, you are well aware, is just nothing compared even with the British economy. Russia is so big. Russia's economy is less than Texas. And the main and most important, I would say, thing in this fight is Ukraine. Ukrainian resilience. Nobody expected that Ukraine can withstand Russia for not 3.5 years. I was sworn in as a prime minister a few days after Russia illegally annexed Crimea. We are fighting for more than 11 years against the armed to the teeth Russia, with nukes, with 150 million population, with a close ally as China, and with an enormous resources. So we've managed to fend off Russia, and we've managed to show to the entire world that Ukraine, which is smaller and weaker, in real terms is stronger and bigger, with your support. Before that trip, I asked one of the most noble and prominent pollsters of Ukraine to conduct polls. What's really happening in Ukraine? And I use this panel and platform actually to provide you with an exclusive information on the latest polls, what is right now in Ukraine. So 74% of Ukrainians strongly believe that Ukraine can win this war militarily. 74% on the 11th year of our fight against Russia. The question, who do you trust the most? And the champion is definitely the armed forces of Ukraine. 92.6% have full trust in Ukrainian armed forces. Top 10 institutions Ukrainian trust: rescuers, volunteers, volunteer battalions, intelligence, bodyguards, counterintelligence, and DoD. So we respect our agencies, and we believe that these agencies can deliver the victory. Top 10 countries with the most approval ratings. I mean, those who Ukrainians love and like. Netherlands, Canada, Norway, Latvia, Lithuania, Germany, France, Sweden, and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The same goes with the political leaders, and your prime minister have very high approval ratings in Ukraine. I wish him to have the same in the United Kingdom. It's around 80%, folks. The most approved institutions. So, 86% of Ukrainians approve the European Union, and 76% of Ukrainians approve NATO. The reason why I'm telling this is that, look, Ukrainians still believe that we will join both the European Union and NATO. And I want to reiterate once again about NATO, because I don't trust in any kind of security guarantees except Article 5 of Washington Treaty. All of the rest is the perfect verbal gymnastics, special purpose vehicles, amazing models, how to create a new type of security guarantees. It won't work. And a majority of Ukrainians support this kind of take. So if a referendum on joining NATO were held, 83% of Ukrainians would vote yes. Only 11% would vote against, and 6% are undecided. So there are a number of different numbers, okay? So I don't want to bother you with the numbers, and I would be happy to share an overwhelming survey with you. So in order for Ukraine to win, as I have already told, we have everything. We have capacity, we have power, we have cash, we have production facilities. There's only one thing missing: political will and guts. I believe that, for example, the latest summit of our European friends was slightly talk shop, because we need to undertake real decisions. What is needed? The first and most important: financial and military aid. In terms of financial aid, the budget gap for Ukraine would be around from $150 to $170 billion in the forthcoming 3 years. On the one hand, it is a staggering number. But on the other hand, look at the number, look at the volume of the Russian frozen assets that have been seized by the European Union. It's around $300 billion. So the thing is that we desperately need to confiscate these assets. And there is another cheap talk over an issue. Is it legal or it's illegal? It's just ridiculous. Because Russia has violated an international law. Russia committed an act of aggression. Russia commits atrocities and crimes against humanity in Ukraine. So it is about justice, whether we can bring Russia to justice. And the confiscation of the Russian assets is the best way to show that the world will not give any kind of leeway or greenway to Russia, that the world will punish Russia for everything that Russia has committed. The second issue is the military support. And if you dig into the numbers, so we highly appreciate, and if not you guys, we would be in a dire strait. I want to be very clear, because look, your support, both military and financial, is of crucial importance for us. But if you look into the numbers, an overall support for Ukraine per year would be around 0.1% of GDP. 0.1. Not 1, not 10, just 0.1. And due to this very contribution, I won't say it's a contribution. It is investment in your security. We are fighting for ourselves, but we are defending you. So due to this kind of financial and military contribution, Ukraine managed to degrade Russian land forces by 50%. Ukraine, with your support, has compromised Russian intelligence. Russians are out of Soviet stockpiles. So the threat that Russia posed to Ukraine and to you has been diminished. And we as Ukrainians paid the highest price. This is the price of the human being, of the lives of the human beings. The third issue, so militarily, we need to get military support, and I expect that the US administration at least, or at last, will decide to provide a security supplemental for Ukraine. We are still getting some support from the United States, from the previous appropriation bill. So these stockpiles are dwindling, but we expect that the new administration will make a real U-turn in providing an additional support to Ukraine. In terms of sanctions, no doubt we have to ramp up sanctions, and there are a number of tools how to do it. And we need to scrutinize what kind of effectiveness of the sanctions have been already in place. Look, Russia is the most sanctioned state on earth. One can say that, yeah, there are a number of sanctions, but we didn't achieve what we expected, the collapse of the Russian economy. That's true on the one hand, but on the other hand, I still believe that the sanctions are useful and effective, and we can elaborate on this if you ask questions. Because look at the Russian export of ammo. It dropped by 94%. Look at the state of the Russian economy. It's far from being perfect, let me put it this way. Look at the Russian state coffers. And last but not least, how to get along with India and how to press on China. Because China is a part of this global war against the West. China is interested in the defeat of Ukraine and defeat of the Western world. China provides a lifeline to Russia. India is a different story. And I believe that we have, Americans definitely, and you have the chance somehow to get along with India and to find the common ground. Not to punish India, but to incentivize India. If things remain as it is now, chances for our victory are not as high. Look at the draft budget that Russia presented a few days ago. Designated war criminal Putin is very clear. He is not eager to cut any kind of deals. The military expenditures in the Russian budget for the next year are practically the same, flat. It's 5% less than this year. It is around $130 billion. Look at the Russian budget. What is another biggest, I would say, chunk of money they are ready to disburse? For what? For propaganda, for disinformation. So, for me, these are the clear signs, except a never-ending drone and missile attacks, that Putin is not eager to cut any kind of deal and that he wants to prosecute this war till the end. And for him, the end is an annihilation of Ukraine and annihilation of Ukrainian state and restoration of the Soviet Union. That's his goal. To wrap up, you are the superpower. The United Kingdom. Maybe you underestimate yourself. You are one of the richest economists in the world. You have brilliant folks in the military. You have strong military. You have very good military production capacities. You possess nukes, and you're the members of the strongest alliance on earth, which is NATO. The reason why I'm telling this is that sometimes we underestimate ourselves. This time, we have to be very clear. We can win this war, but actions are needed. Thank you. It wasn't too boring?
It wasn't boring at all. Thank you.
I did it in 10 minutes, as you told me to do.
It was inspiring. It was inspiring, and it was honest, and it was refreshing. And you really went through all the critical elements of continuing to support Ukraine on its path of success. So I will very shortly turn it over to the audience for questions, so please prepare yourself. I can maybe start with one of my own, just out of curiosity. We're now, 3.5 years into the war, and the numbers that you threw out there in terms of support for the armed forces, support, belief in victory are really impressive. What do you think is the key to this resilience? Because in addition to political will, one thing I do see lacking in Western societies is resilience. When we look at the drone attacks over Denmark in recent days, the Prime Minister gave a very inspiring speech, not about what capabilities need to be bought or how Denmark should respond. She talked about getting used to it, getting used to the fact that we're in a hybrid war in Western Europe, we're in an actual war with Ukraine, or in Ukraine. How do you build that resilience?
You should ask Ukrainian people. Look, we are very special, but it seems to me that every nation is very special. Okay? We just want to live. We just want to survive. Because look what happened in Bucha, in Mariupol, in everywhere where Russian military was present. You can't even look. It is atrocities. It is beyond imagination. So that's what I said in Paris. I said, guys, you were inspired by Bolshoi theater, by Russian culture. Guys, that's not the Russian culture. The Russian culture is torture, killing, rape. This is the Russian culture. And that's the reason why we just want to survive. We are very creative. Russians try to turn us into the darkness, or this never-ending missile attacks on electricity grids. And we experienced during the winter time blackouts. And you can't even realize how Ukrainians were creative. Every single apartment managed to have its own generator or some kind of battery, and restaurants were open, and people were ready to deliver some stuff. So we are still surviving. And that's not just a survival mode. After this kind of drone and missile attacks, so in the morning it is a disaster. It's better not to look into the mirror, because I'm not sure that you can find yourself in that mirror. But by the end of the day, okay, we even smile, we chat, we even can have some kind of glass of something, except water. So the good thing is that Ukrainians are very resilient, they are creative. We are in a surviving mode. We trust our military, and the Ukrainian military is just amazing. And I believe they will appreciate if you applaud to the Ukrainian military. They are so strong fighting on the front lines right now. Thank you. We missed your applause, sir.
Could I ask the Prime Minister whether all the political parties in your parliament are fully in support of the government, or is there any opposition within the political system in Ukraine to what the government is?
Let me put it this way. Whether Ukraine is still a vibrant democracy, yes, it is. Look, and there are numbers for this. 66% of Ukrainians are supporters of democracy. 66. I'm not sure whether you have these kind of numbers in the UK. Even despite the fact that we are under the martial law. Is there any kind of opposition? Yes, it's normal to have the opposition and the government. Whether this opposition is vocal, yes, it has some kind of discrepancies with the government. But in current circumstances, we have to rally around the flag. We need to win this war. And as Ukraine gets either the ceasefire or full and comprehensive peace deal, which maybe is to happen in the long run, we will hold free and fair elections. And Ukrainian people will decide who is to govern the country. But as of now, it is so important to preserve this kind of unity, even despite the fact that we are not always on the same page with the government, okay? But the thing is that otherwise, the biggest enemy of Ukraine and the United Kingdom, which is Russia, will definitely misuse this. They are very good at this. And they want actually to dismantle this fragile unity that still exists for 11 years. President Zelensky still maintains a very high approval rating. Could you imagine being in the war for 3.5 years and being in the office of the president for 6 years? He still has 60%. Could we find anyone in the EU who holds similar approval rating? But once again, Ukrainians will decide who is to govern Ukraine after the war. But first we need to win the war.
Fair enough. Right, we do have a roving microphone, so so you can project. Please spot them and introduce yourself if you don't mind.
And I am not a fan of Zelensky, but I support him as a commander-in-chief. And I will do it.
Martin Platt. Just to tell you that I work with New Forest for Ukraine, and we send an articulated lorry to Ukraine once every 9 days, full to the brim. May I ask you, there seems to be a lot of fighting around Pokrovsk, if I pronounce, I'm sure I pronounce it incorrectly. Can you explain how important that battlefront is and how it's developing?
Sir, with all due respect, I comment only the stuff I really understand. I don't comment any kind of military issues. It will be slightly unprofessional. But what I know for sure, from the economic standpoint, Pokrovsk is a key, I would say, area for both Ukrainian military and Ukrainian economy. Russians expected to take over Pokrovsk last year, in August last year, and they failed to get it. If we lose Pokrovsk, it's gonna provide a leeway for Russian military to take over another source of land in another regions, in Dnipropetrovsk region. So it gives a kind of green light for Russians. And Ukrainian military did an astonishing and terrific job in actually fending off Russian military, despite the fact that they've sent hundreds of thousands of people. And Russian casualties are staggering at this particular front line. I know those commanders who are right now in charge in Pokrovsk. And I've talked to them a few days ago. They are in quite, I would say, positive mood. I usually say that, look, we are tired, we are exhausted, but we are not broken. And the same goes with the Ukrainian military.
Sir John.
Just wait for
Thank you. Just picking up that point, really. I mean, you talked convincingly and impressively about Ukrainian resilience in spite of the huge pressures that have been there for 3.5 years and more. But at the same time, it's, you know, one obviously in thinking about morale, what the overall state of national morale under the pressure that's there, particularly the air attacks on civilian targets, for example, and also, I mean, the polling that you quoted, that's obviously very interesting, but I'd be interested to hear whatever you have to say about polling on, for example, support for some kind of peace deal, some kind of peaceful arrangement, and so on. So what, you know, in a bit more detail, is the public mood? How do you describe that across the country? And in terms, and it's related to this, in terms of what you're worried about, the sort of vulnerability that you're most worried about as you're thinking across the scene, what is it that is highest there? What are you most sort of uncertain of?
Mostly I am uncertain about the durable and comprehensive support package for Ukraine. Mostly I am uncertain about the durability and consistency of the support package for Ukraine, financial and military. Whether the European Union and the United States can really pass the decisions that are needed. And they are needed urgently, because Putin is playing for time. Putin is definitely playing for time, and he believes that time is on his side. And the more we are dragging our feet, the higher chances Putin has not to win this war, but to drag us into a never-ending war of attrition. So this is the biggest threat I see. Okay? A kind of inconsistency and unwillingness to pass bold and strong decisions. In terms of the victory, what victory means for Ukrainians, and that's the question you've asked, and I have these numbers. So two options have nearly equal support. Return to the borders of February 23, 2022. This is before the large-scale invasion. So 25% of Ukrainians believe that this is an option. And return to the borders of 1991, another 25%. So in general, 50% of Ukrainians strongly believe that we have to make our best to get rid of Russian military boots on Ukrainian soil. Stopping the war along the current front line, 22%. So whether Ukrainians have appetite for any kind of land swaps? No. Because it has nothing to do with the land swap. It is a land grab. And we won't buy this.
Ooh, now lots of hands. All right, I think you were first.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Robert Walter, former Member of Parliament and Chair of Eurodefence UK. I wonder, following on from that question, President Trump's view on the situation moves by the week, but as recently as last week, he told President Zelensky that Ukraine could win back all its territory with the help of Europe. And I just wonder whether you would welcome a more proactive stance from a coalition of European nations. It's been suggested securing the border with Belarus, providing air cover over the Ukrainian territory that you currently hold, and whether you would welcome that to free up your own forces to fight against the Russians.
So, let me put it this way. On the latest comments of tweets or Truth Social posts, it's better to say, Truth Social, of President Trump, I strongly welcome his U-turn, a verbal U-turn. And I would be delighted and kindly ask the US administration and personally the President of the United States to make an action U-turn. I usually say that I admire verbal gymnastics, but we are living in a different geopolitical gym. In this gym, heavy lifting is needed. The second message, sir, we desperately need Americans. And I want to be very clear about that. And I was really concerned over the chances that Americans can turn its back on Ukraine. And there were some rumors, let me put it this way, a few months ago. The reason why we need Americans is very clear for everyone. You're well aware of this so-called backstop, I mean the support of Americans in providing additional security guarantees for Ukraine. And Americans have a very well-developed military-industrial complex, reconnaissance, intelligence, cash, everything. And today I was told by a very honorable gentleman, I'm not sure I can quote him, but that instead of coalition of the willing, we need to have coalition of the billing. To pay for both purchases of arms in the European Union and in the United States. We are quite inventive in different types of coalitions, different models, different new unions. I believe that we have enough of different tools starting with NATO and ending with Rammstein. There is no need to invent the bicycle. There is no need to invent anything else. Could we use everything that is already on the table? Because otherwise, you know, it sounds like a cheap talk, you know, like a hot air. Because instead of doing something, the way I read it, we pretend to do something. We are just kicking the can down the road. But that's not the way to find the solution. And last but not least, what you just mentioned. This air shield, I mean, let's put it this way. No-fly zone would be of crucial importance for us. There are some kind of repercussions, and there are some kind of objections that in order to provide this Sky Shield initiative, we need to have military boots on the ground. Yes, we need to have military boots on the ground, not on the front lines. But this is the best way to show to war criminal Putin that you are serious in defending Ukraine. Yes, we need it.
No. All right. In the back.
Hi, I'm Sandy Alsop. I'm Alsop Technologies. If there is any way in which anyone here or anywhere else would be able to help Ukraine, is there a contact or a person, maybe yourself or somebody else, you could go to put suggestions or resources in your way?
Could you elaborate? We have the president of Ukraine, who is doing quite a good job, okay? So he got along with President Trump, starting with the Rome in the St. Paul Cathedral. So we have a coalition of the European leaders, and your Prime Minister, I mean the UK Prime Minister, and Jonathan Powell, they are doing a tremendous job. So then after this notorious Alaska meeting, they actually headed to DC in order to change the narrative or to make this U-turn that President Trump already did. I am doing my job as a former PM. You know, all these jobless former PM, they always have to do something. And in this particular case, this is my mission. To go and to deliver the message, to ask every single country, please help us. And we're going to help you.
Well, but for a company, for small companies or big companies, they don't always have a name and they can't ring up President Trump. Nothing happens. But could people come to you personally, or is there an organization that individual companies can go to? Because often individual companies have all sorts of resources and they don't know who to go to. Honestly, I can't ring up the Prime Minister. Nothing happens. So that's what I'm asking.
Well, we have plenty of different agencies that are responsible for this kind of job. Whether we have one united company, no, we don't. And I've got your message. It seems to me that we need to establish a kind of very big special purpose machine. I've got your message, and you're absolutely right. And this machine has to comprise everyone. Incumbents and formers, you know, think tanks and pundits. You're absolutely right. So I would be delighted if RUSI issued this kind of statement.
Well, you know, to be honest, if you're talking about military assistance or economic assistance towards military support, I think there is a mechanism where we could help you get in touch with the right people in the ministries of defense so those offers can be made through the Rammstein process. Sometimes, you know, some things are more useful than others. You know, we just saw an offer of Gripen aircraft to Ukraine, which I was finally happy to see happening because all along I was convinced Gripen was the better solution than, dare I say, F-16s in terms of accessibility. So it's a generous offer, but I think given, you know, the immediate challenges, we'd want to put it through a coherent process to make sure that it was urgent and important, but we're happy to help with that. Yes, in the center, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ewan Grant, UK Defence Forum. I worked for the EU BAM mission in its early days, but I was based in Kyiv, and I was back on other programs, both before and immediately after the Maidan. There is simply no excuse in the West for not understanding what was happening. I mean, Russia was putting the pressure on Yanukovych, wasn't he? But my question is, you mentioned the importance for all of us, but particularly Ukraine, of unity. What message do you want to send to the forces of disunity in the West who are wittingly or unwittingly, and sadly it's mainly wittingly, acting on behalf of Putin? And I would remind the audience, in one of Mark Greeny's prophecy books, Commander-in-Chief, the Gripens from Sweden saved the day. But what message would you like to take us to call out the far too many fellow travelers? I've seen some of them, including in academia.
Thank you, sir, for this kind of question. Look, Russia has already waged a hybrid war against the free world. NATO is not fighting with Russia. It is Russia that is fighting with NATO. The EU is not fighting with Russia. It is Russia that is fighting with the European Union. Look what's happening. Acts of sabotage, terrorist attacks, political assassination, seabed war against cables, buzzing of your aircrafts, incursion into the airspace of NATO, Russian fighter jets in Estonia. What the hell is this? If it quacks like a duck, it is a duck. And look at the number of cyber attacks. And your people, sorry to say, but they have to realize that this is the threat to your own security, to your own life. Russia wants to sow chaos in your countries. They want to undermine this fragile stability that you enjoy. And it's normal. This is the way the human being is actually built up. Okay? So we can't comprehend what's going to happen in case if, until it happens. So the best way for your ordinary people to realize what Russia is really about is just to go to Ukraine and to see what is happening. Just trust me, it is unbearable for the majority of Ukrainians. I don't want to exaggerate, but it is unbearable. And the situation is not an easy one, let me put it this way. I don't want to provide you with any kind of gloomy perspectives. I told you that we are resilient, we are fighting like hell, and we want to win, and we have to win, and we will win with your support. But we are human beings, we are not robots, sorry. And sometimes you are just tired, exhausted, you know, and in disarray. And so my message to your governments is that investing into Ukraine, you are not just helping Ukraine. You are investing into your own security. We are at the front lines. And frankly speaking, this kind of investment is a peanuts compared to what we have achieved. And I've told you, 0.1%. What are we talking about? I'm sorry. That I am a former central banker too, so I know what is 0.1% of GDP. Look what Russia is doing, sir. And your question is it is a deep question. Russia is playing with the far rights all over the European Union. They've jumped on this bandwagon. And these far rights got some kind of an additional impetus or injection with this kind of scaremongering. You know the reason why Russia sent, one of the reasons why Russia sent its drones and fighter jets to the NATO airspace? Well, it's definitely to check up the protocols, the military protocols, to figure out how radars work, blah, 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 to test an Article 5, Article 4. We are well aware of this. But there is another one very important issue that we are not allowed to miss. They want to frighten you. They are sending this signal to you that, look, if you do not abandon Ukraine, we're going to invade you. But the thing is that if you abandon Ukraine, then you will definitely invade. So there is only one chance to stop Russia, to make Ukraine win. No way. There is no other way. And people still are living in some kind of myth about Russia. Invincible Russia, big Russia. Well, it could be. But let's go back to history. I just witnessed an amazing table. Crimean War,
Yes,
where Russia
upstairs.
capitulated. You guys have this table, I have the picture, in this very building. So we can have the similar table in Kyiv. Russo-Sino War, the First World War, the First Chechen War, the war against Ukraine. What kind of additional evidences we need? Just tell me.
It's very compelling. I mean, I will say, you know, if you watch the patterns of Russian hybrid activity over time and the times when they threaten tactical nuclear use, I think if you map that, you do see a correlation between a sense of faltering public support, pressure on the economy, failures and deaths on the battlefield, and then the external projection. So I think we should all be paying attention to that and taking your point that it's not big Russia. It's small, weak, and we shouldn't underestimate ourselves.
And let me remind you that Russia already have lost 1 million in dead and wounded. 1 million. This is the size of the city in the UK.
Shocking. Yes.
Thank you so much. I mean, a Chinese dissident said, and he was not believed by a very prominent China analyst until she looked more deeply into it. A Chinese dissident said that Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party had actually designed to have 4 hybrid wars, the Russia fighting Ukraine as a hybrid war directed by China and supported by China, Gaza attacking Israel with Chinese engineers in Gazan tunnels, building capacity for these tunnels. That's a second hybrid war. The Iranian Western conflict, by the way, the Israel-Gaza conflict was to create a division between the Arab world and the West. That was the design behind it. And the Iranian, likewise, Iranian Western conflict, and finally the North Korean hybrid aggression against Japan, etc., in threats. So to what extent do you think that the real problem, well, obviously that Russia, Putin bought into Xi's encouragement for Putin to make this attack, to what extent do you think there's validity in the theory of this Chinese dissident that China is designing to create these 4 hybrid wars? Thank you.
Well, I fully share his take, and look what's happened in Ukraine. Putin illegally annexed Crimea just after he had these Olympic Games or whatever right, and Russian high-profile, Chinese were present in this. I won't say that China endorsed Putin, but I say that Putin got the back of China, and vice versa. The same happened in 2024. Completely, it's a copycat scenario. And if one can say that China is neutral, sorry, it's BS. It is not true. Russia is not, China is not neutral. China is an accomplice. China is responsible and liable for the war that Russia waged against Ukraine. China is providing the lifeline to Russia. China is financing the war chest of Russian Federation. China is buying Russian oil. And China is actually supporting Russia in circumventing sanctions. China is using Russia as a ram in the UN Security Council. China is sponsoring North Korea, and North Korea is sending its troops to the Ukrainian soil. China is giving financial lifeline to North Korea that produce ammo and the rest of the stuff. And this ammo goes directly into Ukraine. China supported Iran. And China was the biggest purchaser. 90% of Iranian oil went where? To China, through the shell companies. So who's behind the curtain? And they are pretending to be a very kind panda.
All those changes you mentioned, Prime Minister, are things that
Look,
we need to worry about in the future as well.
I am
as
talking about the Chinese government. I want to be very clear because you have a big Chinese community. I am very clear about the Chinese government.
Yes. In the back here with the beer.
Thank you. Matins, Associate Fellow here at the Institute, amongst other things. Prime Minister, thank you very much for your presentation. In your prepared remarks, you mentioned two scenarios for how the war ends, the first being that Ukraine defeats Russia militarily. In that scenario, what would you say would be the most immediate priorities for the government of Ukraine in terms of the economy, in terms of areas such as defence and security, and what measures would you propose would be necessary in order to build deterrence to deter further Russian expansionism in the future?
Well, here is the thing, sir. I wish to have just one silver bullet, but that's not the way it works. And the same thing I was told by the Ukrainian military. When you ask, guys, what do you need? You need fighter jets, or you need tanks, or you need drones, or you need ammo, or you need shells, or you need missiles. They said, look, it's clear that you are far from the military. We need everything. The same goes with the question you've asked, sir. It is a comprehensive plan. It is a comprehensive action plan. We need everything at once. I will tell you that this would be a sea change if, for example, in the nearest future, in a few weeks, the US House decides to provide secondary sanctions against Russia. The US House decides to provide a security supplemental for Ukraine. The President of the United States decides to lift the restrictions on long-range missile strikes and provides this kind of ammo for Ukraine. The EU decides to seize the frozen assets of the Russian Federation, to confiscate, sorry, not to seize, to confiscate these frozen assets of the Russian Federation and impose in conjunction with the United States secondary sanctions. Both of them press on China and incentivize India to wean off the Russian dependence on oil. And if it happens in 30 days, this would be a real game changer, just real game changer.
I think we'll leave it at that. I see there are more questions, but essentially we're out of time. And I really appreciated what you've laid out for us, which is a plan that all the mechanisms are in place, just takes political will and decisiveness. Yes. Some of those too. Thank you so much. All right, just to remind the audience very briefly that for RUSI members, the next event is tomorrow at 1300. We'll be hearing from Dr. Aaron Bateman, exploring his research on the history of accelerating superpower military competition in space during the Cold War. So it won't be me. It will not be you. You are off the hook. You did your job and more. Thank you so much, Prime Minister.
Thank you.